Hey guys, what's going on? This is Tyler, and today we are going to be getting into a what if that I've been wanting to continue for a while, but I just never got around to it. But today I've gotten around to it, and today we're going to be doing What If Cooler Turned Good Part 2. Now, I won't be doing a recap, but Part 1 will be linked down in the description if you guys haven't seen Part 1, so you guys can go see that, and right after you guys can come back here. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into today's video.
Hey, collecting rings like a Sonic. Bitches wanna party. My wrist getting heavy, so I got 'em on a diet, yeah. Flex like I'm Hogan. Yo, bitch coming over. Yeah, we respect.
We start our story off during the 7-year peace gap, which would still take place, but only this time Gohan would train over the 7 years thanks to the help of Cooler. He tells Gohan that there are always going to be people out there like Cell or even stronger, so he must prepare. And so Gohan and Cooler would train, and this eventually leads into Goten actually joining in training when he's born, and this results into a much stronger Goten and Gohan and Cooler. And Cooler has actually made a living for himself by helping Chi-Chi's farm out, and in return she allows him to live nearby the Sun family, and he would build a house of his own. Eventually, Gohan would still go to school and meet Videl, and the tournament would still eventually begin, but the last thing we would see is Cooler flying up to the lookout, smirking and saying how it's been a while since they trained. We would then be revealed that he's actually talking to Piccolo, and Piccolo would then laugh, saying how he would agree, saying that things are going to be interesting once this tournament starts. Cooler would look around his surroundings, reminiscing back when they were getting ready for the Cell games, and at that point the two would basically train on the lookout in preparation for this tournament, while Gohan and Goten would train and Trunks and Vegeta would train. Eventually the World Tournament would begin with Cooler replacing Krillin's opponent, which means Cooler and Krillin would face off in the first round, which means Krillin would kind of get a little bit of a PTSD moment from when he encountered Frieza on the Namek Saga, but we would actually see Cooler's growth here during the 7-year gap, as we get to see Cooler kind of act a lot more merciful and a lot more calm than his brother Frieza. I guess we could see this kind of as like a little reference to Krillin and Frieza, slash a little bit of a moment for Cooler to show his growth over the course of this what if, since this main premise of the what if is what if Cooler turned good and his growth to becoming a good guy. So I feel like this could definitely captivate that idea, and as we all know, eventually Gohan and Kibito Kai would actually go and fight, and this would lead into Spopovich and Yamu coming in and stealing Gohan's energy and then flying off to Babidi's hideout, where the Z Fighters along with Cooler, well, I guess you could say the Z Fighters including Cooler because Cooler is actually a part of the Z Fighters now, but you guys get my point. Anyways, the whole point is the main group plus Cooler would basically go out and stop Babidi, which would lead into Piccolo and Krillin getting spat on. Cooler, seeing his homie Piccolo get spat on, doesn't really like this, with an enraged Cooler heading into Babidi's ship front charge, being completely enraged and reckless, and Deborah, sensing these negative emotions inside of Cooler, decides to take note of this and actually tell Babidi, and this would lead into Babidi attempting to possess Cooler. Now with this, Cooler would actually get caught off guard and taken aback by this. However, Cooler would understand that he got the better of himself and he needs to resist this and stop Majin Buu. He can't let himself get the better of himself and let Babidi possess him. At that point, Cooler decides to calm down and then focus all of his power in his mind, and he overpowers Babidi's possession. At that point, Babidi is taken aback by this, and Cooler then laughs maniacally. At that point, he would then rush at Deborah and easily one-shot him, just punching him through the chest, and at that point, he would then tell everyone that followed him here to basically get out of the ship. At that point, Goku and Shin quickly use their instant transmission moves, or Shin using instantaneous movement, and Goku using instant transmission, to basically get everyone else out of there, and at that point, we would then see Cooler completely eviscerate Babidi's spaceship, completely killing everyone in it, Babidi included, which means there is no way to try and revive Majin Buu now, since Cooler, well, took out the threat early. And at that point, Majin Buu's egg would be taken to the Supreme Kai world, and the Supreme Kai would thank everyone, especially Cooler, for all their hard work. At that point, Shin and Kibito would promise to keep in touch with the Z Fighters, and this would conclude the Buu saga much more earlier than in canon. So yeah, Cooler actually ended the Buu saga kind of early, which is kind of a cool thing. Eventually, 4 years would pass, with Cooler still keeping up with his training, and eventually even discovering a golden power. However, he is not on the complete verge of grasping it. However, he is like kind of like in that stage where he was training by himself and he just felt like a golden flash of power, and so he understands that he needs to try and find this power and break his limits, since this power would actually make him ahead of everyone, and this power is something that Cooler definitely would like to have in his arsenal. And also, another detail I forgot to mention, Goku is actually going to stay dead here, since he has no reason to be alive. If anything, he has more of a reason to stay dead because he doesn't really need to protect Earth anymore. The Earth has strong fighters like Goten, Trunks, Gohan, and Vegeta, and Cooler. However, Gohan and Cooler would be keeping up with their training along with Vegeta, Trunks, and Goten, and those guys would be a lot more powerful than their canon selves. However, it wouldn't make a difference in the next saga when Beerus arrives onto Earth and crashing in Bulma's birthday party, and the Z-Fighters have no other choice but to eventually fight him, since I feel like Beerus would get bored and just be impatient at the fact that there's no Super Saiyan God in front of him. And so he would just fight everyone on Earth, including all the other Saiyans, and this would lead into Vegeta still getting an enraged boost, and Cooler even getting a rage amp from trying to protect his planet, and even briefly obtaining the golden form and contending with Beerus. However, Beerus just adds in a little bit more power and knocks Cooler out of the form. Anyways, after this fight between Cooler and Beerus, Gohan would actually go up and get the Dragon Balls and come up with the idea of asking Shenron about the Super Saiyan God and how to summon it. And when they get the idea of how to summon it, they realize they only have 5 Saiyans. And at this point, they would basically go and recruit Tarbell quickly, and Tarbell, knowing that Beerus would destroy him along with the rest of the universe if he doesn't get the Super Saiyan God right now and if he doesn't help out, along with the fact that it is his brother after all, and they both do care for each other in the end. So I don't see why Tarbell wouldn't want to help, so he would just help anyway. Anyways, the 6 Saiyans would hold hands, and the God form would then go to Gohan, because he's been training all this time, and he's been preparing himself for basically any other threat, just in case, because of what happened with Cell. Anyways, Gohan, who would fight Beerus, similarly to how Goku does, would absorb the God Ki into his base form, and because of this, he would actually push Beerus even further and catch him by surprise, and this would lead into Beerus still sparing Earth, and Cooler feeling behind, he feels like he should start training even harder than ever before, which would lead into Cooler flying up and heading to the lookout immediately right after the Battle of God saga and right after Beerus and Whis leave Earth, and he would basically try and train with the intention of surpassing Super Saiyan God and trying to access this golden form. At that point, we see Cooler enter the time chamber, and we then get a fade to black. We would then time skip to a few months later. At that point, we would then see Cooler and Piccolo meditating on the lookout, and the two of them would immediately sense a presence that they are familiar with. They both are familiar of, actually. Lord Frieza. At that point, Cooler would immediately fly out to where Frieza is because he has a score to settle, and that is his little brother after all, and he needs to put him down. And at that point, Cooler would arrive immediately in front of Frieza, and Frieza, seeing his brother, would laugh, saying how pathetic his brother looks because he's now joining with the Earthlings, the people who actually eliminated not only his father, but also Frieza himself. He's a disgrace to his own family, and Cooler then smiles and he then says, "Oh brother, you and I both know that our father was arrogant, and you clearly have his trait. But me, I have the intelligence of him. You see, our father was a very intelligent man, but he was also arrogant, and you're just stupid. However, me, I'm much smarter than you think. And you and I both know that I would have just suffered the same fate as you two if I didn't take my choices and actually join the Z-Fighters. And now look at me, I'm in a much better spot, and even stronger than you." At that point, Frieza then laughs, and he would then say, "Oh, do you really think that?" At that point, he would then transform into his final form. And Cooler just kind of looks at Frieza like all confused because he senses Frieza's power and it's nowhere near Cooler's either. So Cooler's point still stands and he still laughs, and Frieza would try and attempt to hit Cooler in his final form, but Cooler would just overwhelm Frieza with power and nearly knock him out in one hit. At that point, Frieza is forced to transform into his golden state right off the bat, and at that point he would punch Cooler into a mountain, and Cooler nearly dies from this one punch, but he barely manages to take it. At that point, Cooler would then laugh, saying, "I see you managed to obtain the golden form, but I obtained a much more higher power than that." At that point, Cooler would transform into his golden state, becoming relative to Frieza in power. But at that point, he would then power up even further and actually even surpass Frieza. The Z-Fighters are even sensing Cooler and Frieza's power, but Frieza doesn't even notice this. At that point, Frieza would attempt to contend with his older brother, but Cooler would show much more dominance and actually show much more higher powers of force than Frieza and easily knock him into his base form in just a couple of hits. At that point, Cooler would actually show off and reveal that he actually has the perfected golden state, and at that point he would immediately finish off his brother with a small supernova that destroys the entire island he and his brother are on. Meanwhile, the Z-Fighters and the Frieza soldiers are in the air all fighting, and Piccolo showing off much more higher levels of power due to him training with Cooler and his additional training beforehand. He would just overpower Tagoma and easily kill him. At that point, Captain Ginyu Frog wouldn't really get the chance to try and change with anyone because everyone's in the air, and he would probably die along with Frieza on the same island that Cooler would destroy with the supernova. Now, if you guys are wondering as to where Gohan and Vegeta are, well, they are actually training with Whis over the course of the few months. since Gohan still wants to protect Earth and his daughter and his wife. And so Gohan would basically go on his off time, while Vegeta would have probably just let out some food for Whis to come to Earth, and at that point Vegeta would have just begged Whis to train him, and Vegeta would probably be a little bit stronger than Gohan since he would have much more training, and Gohan would train less frequently than Vegeta. But that isn't to say Gohan isn't a beast himself, because both him and Vegeta would actually obtain Super Saiyan God pretty easily, and they would actually eventually obtain Super Saiyan Blue, with Gohan being able to kinda not really control it as well as Vegeta, but Vegeta can't really control it as well. They both haven't mastered it yet. And so Gohan and Vegeta would basically get the warning from Earth that something is going down, and the two of them would then arrive on Earth, but then they would get the news that Cooler actually handled everything on his own. Now, as we all know, this would lead into the Universe 6 saga, but I'm going to be leaving that for part 3 of What If Cooler Turned Good. Thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe if you're new. Hit the notification bell. And with that being said, follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. My name is Tyler. I'm going to get up out of here. Peace out. Bye.